I am live. Shalom. Hi, Sandy.
Hi, David.
How are you today?
Well, thank you. Hot.
Yeah. I've been working on a metaphor, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on my metaphor.
Go for it.
This is my metaphor because I've been watching the T-Grog conversation that Jacob had. I could see that you watched at least part of it because I think you were commenting on it live, and it's related to deaf stuff. So our ears don't only hear; our ears also um, control balance and things like that, like vertigo and everything. Is when sometimes there's an issue where the small bones that are in your ears are off, and all these things. And I was thinking to myself, if someone were deaf, could they be so convinced that no one could hear? Like, if I can't hear, no one can hear. And then could you prove to someone that everyone else can hear, but they can't if they've never heard in their lives? Because do you understand the metaphor I'm using?
Odd question. That's an odd question.
Because if I had a sense and you didn't have it, you might be like, no, no, no. Dave, I don't think that's actually a sense. But then if I was just like, no, 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 all of us have the same sense. You just are absent this sense. Like, because I could say, because if you try to explain hearing to me, it's like, okay, so you know how things vibrate? Well, you can detect those. And I'd be like, yeah, I have a sense of feeling. I know what that is. You're not describing anything new. And I was like, no, 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 that's why you have ears. And you'd be like, no, 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 I have ears because that helps me with balance. There's already a function for ears outside of hearing. So therefore, if I don't hear, I don't think there is hearing.
You would have to actually ask that of somebody born without ears.
Yeah.
Because even people who are deaf have variations of deafness, and they, their eardrums will still vibrate. Like, there's still a ton of things going on. So
Yeah.
they know there's something happening.
Right. Right. But that's the thing, is that for people who are very atheistically minded, it seems like, no, 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 I don't experience what you're talking about. I don't have a sense for things the way that you do. And so therefore it does not exist. Does that make sense? This has nothing to do with the Book of Ruth. This is me thinking out loud, and I was just like, it's ever so slightly related to being deaf. So
It
maybe
is,
Sandy can tear apart my metaphor.
Yeah, but when you're asking it, I can feel the edges of some other conversation you've had, some other place this is relevant, something that you're not fully sharing, because it isn't just about ears and whether they work or not and how that would relate to perception in general.
Yeah. Yeah, this is something that I'm thinking about a lot. I'm right now praying for my dad, and if other people could pray for my dad. He is right now opened up to the possibility of God revealing himself to him, but like has never, like, just does not feel like God exists. And he's like right now in the middle of like asking God if God exists, to reveal himself. That old thing that people say. So
So it depends how you're praying for your dad. Like, I mean, is this about him gaining some insight into certain Christian credos, or is it about him
no,
actually hearing God speak to him?
no. For a while, I was doing a Bible study with my dad, where he just became open to the possibility of God's existence for basically the first time since I've known him, um, and um, and we did a Bible study, and he really, really enjoyed it. But he's open to the possibility that there might actually be evidence, but it just doesn't feel real. And I've talked about the soup question. Michael, have you heard my soup questions?
I don't think so.
Soup question is you're making alphabet soup or alphagetti. I prefer alphagetti.
I did hear this. Yes, Paul played a clip of it or something.
Oh, did
Someone,
he?
I don't know.
Okay.
Maybe it's hard to know if I'm hearing things from you or from Paul playing clips of you, or
Yeah. So the alphagetti thing is you're making alphagetti. You spilled the pot. How many words or word, like letters together, before you think someone is trying to communicate to you through the alphagetti? And my dad's answer was no matter, like, no number of words could convince me. As soon as I started thinking someone was trying to communicate to me, I just believe I was crazy.
And the alphabet.
He's like, no, it's fine. No one's talking to me. I'm just crazy. And what I said to him is, okay, so you're admitting no amount of evidence is enough. Then that's not a scientifically or rational or evidence-based belief.
Well, you know what? I think that the interesting thing about that, because I talked to Sam about his non-Trinitarian ideas or whatever, and it seems very clear to me, like in First John, there's two errors you could say. There's the error that Christ is merely human, or the error that Christ is not human, that he's a purely supernatural being. And John very explicitly puts the latter in the worst category. And I think part of the reason why is because if you think Jesus is just a man and not God, that is an understandable lack of faith that God can work with. But if you think basically a supernatural belief for which there can be no evidence at all, you're already assuming like what the disciples saw and all these things were some kind of spiritual manifestation. And then once we get to the once culture goes from thinking that insane people are prophets to thinking that they're insane people, then you're lost. You can't know anything, and that's what you get with that's where you end up. So
Well, yeah. So with Brothers Karamazov, I know that it got spoken of a bunch early on in the corner. I had to read it for university, and I really recommend it to people. But it is enormous. It's Russian literature, so I think it's like 900 pages long, but very good. But it's called the Brothers Karamazov because there's multiple brothers, all with the same father, same last name, if you will, Karamazov. And one of the brothers is a monk in the Russian Orthodox Church, and another brother is an atheist, a rationalist. And they get into like a debate near the end of the book. Ivan, the rationalist, the devil appears to him, and he just, like, the devil literally comes to tempt the rationalist, and he just says, "You're not real. I'm just crazy." And he just becomes convinced of his insanity. I thought that was so interesting because that was my dad's response. And I asked multiple atheists the same question, and they all gave the same response. I just think I was crazy if the alphagetti, like, it's crazy to think soup is talking to you. And I agree with what they're saying on premise, but like, if it happens, I mean, come on. If it's what I say is 5 letters is all I need. If it was just GO, that's not enough for me to leave my house. But if it was go, run together, go, run, I'm leaving my house. I'll come back in 15 minutes. Don't get me wrong, but I'm going to trust the soup for at least 15. Anyway, guys, this is not related to the Book of Ruth at all, Sandy. At all.
Sure it is. I don't know. Maybe.
Actually, it might, because God appears, in my mind, in this section. So I'll bring it up. Sandy, you will read with your excellent reading voice. Share. Is that big enough? Do you want it bigger?
That's fine. Now, now it's big. Okay. Now Naomi had a relative of her husband's, a worthy man of the clan of Elimelech, whose name was Boaz. And Ruth the Moabite said to Naomi, "Let me go to the field and glean among the ears of grain after him in whose sight I shall find favor." And she said to her, "Go, my daughter." So she set out and went and gleaned in the field after the reapers. And she happened to come to the part of the field belonging to Boaz.
Pause. So this to me is where God enters. Okay. She happened to come to the part of the field belonging to Boaz. It's accidental. It's just, oh, what a weird coincidence. Okay. This to me is God is like in the book of Esther, how God operates in the casting of lots, where God is in that process, and when you look at it, you're like, what a weird coincidence. This to me is the setup. Just so happens, which is why this episode is titled Ruth Just So Happens, because that to me is this is how God operates in our lives. Also, this go ahead.
Oh, it reminds me of that story of how like the Dead Sea Scrolls were discovered because some kid's goat just so happened to wander off.
Yeah, and I believe he threw a rock into a cave and heard
Right.
something shatter.
Yeah, that's the story I heard.
There's a couple of just so happens in Jewish tradition. That's also how Moses happens upon the burning bush, right? A lamb. It's this. It's the what's it called? It's the 100 sheep and the one that wanders away. He goes after the one that wanders away, and that's how he happens upon it, which is in the Prince of Egypt. That's where they got that idea from. He's going after the one, and then all of a sudden he catches this thing. Number two, how the text wants you to think of characters. Ruth the Moabite, Ruth the Moabite, Ruth the Moabite. It does not want you to forget what her background is. It does not want you to be like, oh yeah, she's a Jew now, and to forget part of what her origin is. This is great. It just so happens that I tuned into this stream 60 seconds ago. Yeah, it's good. So let us continue on. Verse 4.
You missed a few words of verse 3.
Oh, did I cut you off before you were done?
You did. We said that the part of the field belonging to Boaz, who was of the clan of Elimelech.
That's right.
Don't want to forget that either.
That's right.
And behold, Boaz came from Bethlehem, and he said to the reapers, "The Lord be with you." And they answered, "The Lord bless you." Then Boaz said to his young man who was in charge of the reapers, "Whose young woman is this?" And the servant who was in charge of the reapers answered, "She is the young Moabite woman who came back with Naomi from the country of Moab." She said, "Please let me glean and gather among the sheaves after the reapers." So she came, and she has continued from early morning until now, except for a short rest.
Wonderful. Wonderful job reading. Again, look at how Hashem appears in the text. This is part of how you know Boaz is a good dude, right from the word go, is Boaz says, "Hashem be with you," and they answered, "Hashem bless you." So he's a good dude even to his like hiredlings. Yeah. Does that make sense? And then it's also, again, how God appears in the text, not explicitly, but people blessing in God's name, which I like. Yes, Michael?
There's an interesting connection there with the parable of the prodigal son. Because Boaz's relative, I didn't say his brother, but his relative there, went off to a far off land, and he's staying there. He's a good big brother, or a good he's a good brother, but who treats his hirelings well, because that's what the father does in the parable, because the son says, even if I go, my father treats his hirelings well, I could just
That's right.
go and be a servant. That was the thing that reminded me of it.
Well, in the Hebrew scriptures, it even says that like a righteous man, even his animals love him, right? Like all the way down, everyone has affection and stuff. I also thought that you were referring to the fact that they're watching the people return.
Oh yeah, well that's part of it too. Yeah.
She came back with Naomi from the country of Moab. How romantic do you guys interpret this? Whose young woman is this? I don't really interpret it that way, but I was just wondering because this will become a romantic story.
I think he probably tried to sound casual, but he might not have been asking if it was, if it was a dude.
Yeah. Well, and there is within this, it's also the women would have been more victim to difficulty and people taking advantage of them and everything. So the idea that he notices someone who could be taken advantage of, I think he's got some good characteristic to him. I really, yeah. Boaz is a good dude.
This is to skip ahead a little bit, but when he talks to the other one, the guy that's one step closer or whatever, he doesn't mention Ruth at first. He just mentions the fields or whatever. But if he's knowing their history, all of the big sins, it always comes from seeing first and then taking hold of the thing. So if you're smart, if you don't want to put somebody else in a position of being tempted, you should not draw attention to the thing, because if he had said, oh, look at this, beautiful woman, the guy might have just been like, yeah, hey, it's the Old Testament, I can have two wives. And he might have just, but
yeah, I think so.
I think there is like a, there that because that's kind of Boaz's big risk in the thing, and the way that he does it, because that's what he doesn't want her to get away.
Well, and there's another element to it, which is the guy at the end who won't marry her. He is shown, he accepts her, and then he finds out that she's a Moabite and says no, right? The moment that you receive the field, you also receive Ruth, the Moabite. You'd have to marry her. And then he says, no, that would pollute my own inheritance. So he refuses it.
That's how Boaz talks about her to the other man, but
right.
As her Moabiteness is being her central feature.
Yes. So whatever, because Boaz will seek her knowing this fact. It's basically the first thing he knows about her. He knows that she is a Moabite and that she's taking care of Naomi.
I thought the refusal by the nearer clansmen was simply because he'd be taking on fields that wouldn't be his in the end.
So he says he'll do it, and then at the end, once Ruth is brought in, he goes no.
That's what I mean. He has to provide her a son who will then inherit the fields. Will he not?
Maybe, because if it's just because he says it's Naomi's fields or whatever.
Yeah.
He has to pay money to Naomi, but because Ruth's there, then he has to give her a son, right? So, yeah, I don't know.
Well, it's again, either way, it's it's a douchey thing to do. It is, look, you do this thing to take care of someone. That's the point of the law. The point of the law isn't, look, their inheritance fell apart, so now you get the field.
Right, but Boaz is the only one that knows this. The other guy's not going to find out if he doesn't say anything about it. Unless if Boaz knows if he just takes possession of the fields and Ruth or whatever, that somebody could ask, like, hey, where did you get this? And then he can be found out that he didn't do it properly. But he's the one presenting the information, but he's clearly presenting it in a way where he wants a particular outcome. So he kind of does that to achieve his goal.
Yeah, I think you're right.
It's a little bit of a risk. It's a little bit of a gamble. It's him acting in faith.
Yes. Okay.
But we're not there yet. So
no, let's continue going on.
Then Boaz said to Ruth, "Now listen, my daughter, do not go to glean in another field, or leave this one, but keep close to my young women. Let your eyes be on the field that they are reaping, and go after them. Have I not charged the young men not to touch you? And when you are thirsty, go to the vessels and drink what the young men have drawn."
Okay, pause. Great. First thing he calls her is my daughter. Right? This I think is important because the Moabite daughter connection, which I was talking about already, that to me this is rehashing the creation of Moab through a daughter taking from the father figure, is rehashed here, but now it's put in a positive light, where Ruth is going to put herself in the position of a servant, and through this we get them returning. So again, calls her my daughter, I think is important. Unless I'm crazy, it's just, if you're looking through this book, if you think of all the terms you call your wife, Michael, I'm pretty sure daughter is not one of them.
No.
Yeah. So I think it's to give us pause, and then you go, wait, what is that about? And again, he's already
taking... Is it to let us know that he's old? Is he old? I mean...
Some people definitely think he's old. Yeah. And she probably would have been older than when people first get married, because she's been married for 10 years, right?
Yeah.
So
I mean, I guess, can we assume that he's younger than that other guy, the guy who would inherit before him? Well, I don't know. We don't really know what their relation is. If it's just closer, like on the family tree, or not. It just says relative, right?
But then you also got this invitation to drink from his own well, and that he's really taking charge of this situation, making sure that other people know that she is under, well, you're going to see the metaphor within this chapter, under his wings. And we'll cover what that metaphor means. Sandy, do you have any thoughts on just that little bit?
Nope.
Wonderful. Also, it seems like what he is saying is these guys are going to be reaping, not even for her to pluck from the edges of the field, to just follow the guys after they've already cut the stuff, to just take whatever she wants. Everything has just become a lot easier for her, and it would all be based on, like, there's nothing even in the law that would be required of the level of generosity that he's doing. He's going above and beyond. He is a righteous dude. Continue, Sandy.
Then she fell on her face, bowing to the ground, and said to him, "Why have I found favor in your eyes, that you should take notice of me, since I am a foreigner?" But Boaz answered her, "All that you have done for your mother-in-law since the death of your husband has been fully told to me, and how you left your father and mother and your native land and came to a people that you did not know before. The Lord repay you for what you have done, and a full reward be given you by the Lord, the God of Israel, under whose wings you have come to take refuge." Then she said, "I have found favor in your eyes, my Lord, for you have comforted me and spoken kindly to your servant, though I am not one of your servants."
Yeah, this is, again, the child that she will have is named Obed, which means servant. Let me show a video. I'm going to show a fun little video. Let's share this tab instead. Oh, look at the chicken. So the chicken, you can see the chicken scaring away and widening her wings to cover the young, sometimes to catch them. The goat is like getting curious. Get out of here. And sometimes they'll almost like sit on them, like just cover them with the wings to make sure that goat. I don't know if you know this. There's videos also of like cows and stuff just eating chicks. They'll eat them, even though they're quote unquote a vegetarian. Yeah, herbivore. I think some of these images are so cute. Yeah, that's good. So there's some images of chicks being taken care of by their. That's a covering of the wings that birds will protect, and that people have. If you were just walking in a yard, you know about the way roosters strut. You know about how chickens will protect their young. Also, however, is an image that was used of someone's mantle, right? So sometimes people would wear garments, or even like you can imagine it would start with like a blanket, right? The father gathering a child, or Michael, when you're. I used to tell people this, how to determine if you're on a date. You can tell if you're on a date with someone if you're under the same blanket. I don't care if hands are being held. I don't care what's happening. If you are watching a movie, this is especially for Jason, who's watching out there somewhere, a single individual. As best as I know, Jason, if you watch a movie with a girl and you're both on the couch, that's not a date. But if you guys are watching it and you're both under the same blanket, that is a date, right? Sandy, this is important information, all right?
Like what?
It's very important information. But yeah, you get the image, right? Like covering with the blanket. You can imagine the blanket. If I was just holding it out, it would look like wings, or a garment, or a coat, or even like a large robe, right? I have like, you could describe this as my wings. You can imagine taking someone under, right? Literally the expression of tutelage, or taking someone under your wing. But it has these images of affection, and this image, I believe, reoccurs multiple times. Yeah, under whose wings you have come to take refuge, right? You're like one of those little chicks that God has taken care of. And it's very, very interesting because Boaz sees himself as an agent of Hashem. He says, God repay you. God is going to take care of you. And she says, you have taken care of me. I have found favor in your eyes, my Lord, for you have comforted me and spoke kindly to your servant, though I am not one of your servants. So he is directly acting as God's agent of blessing and taking care of that is being spoken of in the text. It's nice. That's what we get to participate in. We get to participate in what God is doing. Beautiful. Any other comments before we move on?
Nope.
Okay. Go ahead, Sandy.
And at mealtime Boaz said to her, "Come here and eat some bread and dip your morsel in the wine." So she sat beside the reapers, and he passed to her roasted grain, and she ate until she was satisfied. And she had some left over. When she arose to glean, Boaz instructed his young men, saying, "Let her glean even among the sheaves, and do not reproach her. And also pull out some from the bundles for her, and leave it for her to glean, and do not rebuke her."
Yeah, again, this is not what the laws about gleaning are about. Because the laws regarding leaving the edges of your field means that you leave it for the poor to do it. But he's actually saying, what we've already harvested, let her take from that, right? This overflowing blessing. Go ahead, continue on. I find this moment very sweet. Them eating. I wrote a poem about it. Maybe I'll show you that.
Nice.
I think I'll do 2 poems at the end. See how that goes. Go ahead, Sam.
She gleaned in the field until evening. Then she beat out what she had gleaned, and it was about an ephah of barley. She took it up and went into the city. Her mother-in-law saw what she had gleaned. She also brought out and gave her what food she had left over after being satisfied. And her mother-in-law said to her, "Where did you glean today? And where have you worked? Blessed be the man who took notice of her."
Here it is again. Look, people are blessing each other left, right, and they don't realize that they are going to be the blessing for each other, right? Yahweh bless you. Sorry. Hashem bless you. But it's Boaz who does it. May God bless this man. But what is the blessing that's going to come into Boaz's life? It's his wife, and God is going to operate through her getting pregnant. So God bless you, but it's through you that I receive the blessing. It's through me that you receive the blessing. It's just so beautiful. So beautiful. And this is during a terrible time. During the time of the judges. Okay, sorry, continue.
So she told her mother-in-law with whom she had worked, and said, "The man's name with whom I work today is Boaz." And Naomi said to her daughter-in-law, "May he be blessed by the Lord, whose kindness has not forsaken the living or the dead." Naomi also said to her, "The man is a close relative of ours, one of our redeemers." And Ruth the Moabite said, "Besides, he said to me, 'You shall keep close by my young men until they have finished all my harvest.'" And Naomi said to Ruth, her daughter-in-law, "It is good, my daughter, that you go out with his young women, lest in another field you be assaulted." So she kept close to the young women of Boaz, gleaning until the end of the barley and wheat harvests, and she lived with her mother-in-law.
It has this image of like time passing. I think that's an important bit. It doesn't all happen all at once. There's a lot of oh, this could work out, but then it's just day after day of the grind before anything actually positive happens, which I love. Um, he's one of our redeemers. And the language of redeemer is great because God is also a redeemer, right? The one who buys the debt back. And the debt can be personal, but the debt is also on the land, which is why there is a resurrection of the dead, but they're also, when God is referred to as redeemer, it's not just God redeeming his people, it's also God redeeming the world. The earth itself, because the land that would have been the family plot, it itself becomes overgrown with thorns and thistles and everything else. And so the Redeemer is not just the person that buys the debt or takes care of the people, he also turns the land away from thorns and back into like back towards garden, right? You can see it as the Redeemer is bringing it back to Eden. The person is free, the land is not with thorns. This is all the role of the Redeemer.
So there was a few things I noticed, backing it up a little bit.
Yeah.
First, Boaz giving her bread and dipped in wine, which is kind of connects in my mind, obviously like the Last Supper, but also Abraham and Melchizedek with the bread and wine, because that's the first time you see it. And then with there being leftovers, like that's reminding me of like Jesus feeding the 5,000. And then with him giving her even from like the grain that is his, that's almost like maybe like Abraham paying the tithe or whatever to Melchizedek, so he's really showing her like a lot of honor.
Well, it's also cooked. Like it's not just, oh, you take the food. It's he's processed it, he's worked it, he's done all the things for it.
Yeah. And then like with the blessing it keeps going back and forth. Isn't that what Melchizedek does to Abraham? He blesses him or whatever, right?
Right. After the Battle of the Kings.
Yeah. And well, and it's an interesting thing because when he's saying like stay in my field because you'll be safe here, but you might be attacked somewhere else. And that whole thing with Abraham and Melchizedek, it like happens in the midst of
It's after the Battle of the Kings.
Yeah, all the kings,
Battle
and hey, if you wander into one of their camps, if you the king of Sodom that was only interested in the people, well, you might be assaulted if you wander into his camp or whatever, and I wonder even like how. So I mean, because this is in Bethlehem, right? And I
in the house of grain. A reminder again,
Yeah.
Bethlehem is the house of bread. Sorry.
Yeah, and I don't know because I don't think that like where that was, but obviously because Melchizedek was the king of Salem, there, the king of Jerusalem. So yeah, it's an interesting thing. But yeah, but like that was like because it's the Book of Judges, not in the beginning where everyone did what was wicked, but it's at the end where everybody did what was right in their own eyes, and Boaz's eyes are aligned with what the Lord seems to be right. So, I think it's kind of just a good thing just to think that like maybe, because we have all this like cultural chaos and everything, but we have to assume if you're not actually living in one, that there are like these little oases of, God's kingdom here on earth, if you can find them. And if you can't find them, you kind of make them by being generous like Boaz is.
Yeah, it can be found even in these terrible times. I want to make sure, Michael, are you Italian? I can't remember.
Yes.
Okay. So also there's that Italian thing because I want to make sure, I want to honor your connection with Melchizedek. There might be something there, but also it's just also a thing that beginning the meal, you just take the bread and you dip it in the wine, right? The oil in the wine or the vinegar or whatever. I went to an Italian restaurant for my friend's birthday this week, and that's before they bring anything out. Here's some bread, dip it in the wine, right? It's a big thing.
It's not a personal habit of mine, but I guess, I don't know. I feel like my family was not as Italian as some of the like other people I met in the area where I grew up, but that's okay.
Okay, yeah.
My nana's food was real good though, so we still made pasta. We still made pasta from scratch.
Oh,
So,
good from scratch.
Yeah. We have a different one for each holiday. So
nice. Yeah, that's what I grew up with. Lasagna for Christmas Eve. That was it's like a thing, because you do, especially for holidays, you do the ones that take extra effort.
Yeah, for Christmas Eve we do ravioli.
Yeah. If you make that from scratch,
and then a big pot of meat, various meats. So, yeah.
Good. Sandy, anything else that you were noticing within this chapter?
No, I just love the whole chapter.
Okay. I'm going to do some poems. You guys tell me your thoughts on the poems. Or if it brings anything out of the text that maybe you didn't notice before. Can you reread for me? Because I said that these poems are all based on sections of scripture.
Yeah.
Can you read 10 to 13? This right here.
Then she fell on her face, bowing to the ground, and said to him, "Why have I found favor in your eyes that you should take notice of me, since I am a foreigner?" But Boaz answered her, "All that you have done for your mother-in-law since the death of your husband has been fully told to me, and how you left your father and mother and your native land, and came to a people that you did not know before. The Lord repay you for what you have done, and full reward be given you by the Lord, the God of Israel, under whose wings you have taken refuge." Then she said, "I have found favor in your eyes, my Lord, for you have comforted me and spoken kindly to your servant, though I am not one of your servants."
Kind. She falls, feeling the nobility of standing too much for her, feeling kindness is too removed from her kind. Why has the sun risen, and what have I done to deserve its light? How have I, invisible as I am, been given notice by your glance and sight? How have I then, impossibly even in your eye, unfindable in eyes, unfindable in grace, find the favor in those eyes? I am from far away. How could I be seen so closely without turning away? He turns her heavy head up with his lifting language. I have heard all your words, but others have made it to my ears also. I know where you are from. I know of the shadows the fiery sun has streaked across your life, how you call one mother, though you are no longer called wife. You wonder how I am kind. You wandered, poor and blind, to this place to ease the disgrace of another. My eyes are witness, but my eyes are least. May the Master, who sees all from west to east, who has seen all that you have done, may he reward you with shade as well as sun. You have run to Yah. And may his wings cover you in like a fortress, not like a prison. Everything good that is given has come from his wings. I have nothing but a few shoots of barley. My grace is only in part, hardly anything at all. His is in full, more than everything and all. And she responds, I have lost everything, but I have found favor, for I have been found in your eyes, and you speak kind to one who is not your kind. but he says we are all his kind. There we go. There's kind. Jacob is out there somewhere seeing, yes, because in Judaism, it's always been for the blessing of the nations. Yeah, which is also, I had a professor at university who was hated the word nice. Said, I loathe niceness, but he thought kind was a great word. Kind is to treat you like we're the same. Treat you like we're the same kind. It's to treat someone as though they are kin. So that has another meaning within the poem, that it's kind. We're all kin. We're all his kin. Now you have to give me thoughts, otherwise I'm going to read another poem.
It was good. Good job.
Good job.
Just going back and looking at the story, and I think it's interesting. Like, I mean, I don't know. I've always thought like that, just this law that they have to leave the corners and stuff, and the tassels on their garments, and when they trim their hair and stuff, like. And I think maybe especially like even that one, it's like coming out of Egypt, where they have like the shaved heads, and it's like the land of precision with the pyramids and everything, and like it's this thing of like there's a messiness, but it's maybe in seeing it this way, it's like you could take it in a way to show like, and I think there is something to this. Like if I show you my rough edges or whatever, like it's actually going to like improve my ability to help you, or like we actually right now premiering on Chad's channel. I had to talk with some of the guys last night and kind of talked about how if you're in a church or something where the preacher is really good at maintaining his reputation and integrity and not making the mistakes, when the preacher is telling you like this is what you should be doing, it just comes from this place of like, well, yeah, if I was perfect like you, the preacher, but I'm not, so there's no hope. Whereas if you have somebody that gets up there and says, I don't have it all figured out, I make mistakes, I do these, but I'm trying my best, I'm trying to just get up off on my feet and try again, then that's like the person that you can follow. And it gives you the it actually produces more results in the people following the broken and the messy leader than the perfect leader in some ways. But I think there's also a thing of like, you don't have to cut all the grain, because like there's plenty to go around. Like, so there's also there's excess because of like God's favor and his abundance. So that was just thinking about where he's saying to the guys like, pull out the stalks and leave them behind for her to pick up. Like it's not them giving her a handout, but they're giving her they're making it her job to just find enough leftovers super easy. Like there's so much excess everywhere. It's like the manna or something in the wilderness.
Yeah, there's more than enough. There's more than enough. Which again, it's this, to me, it's an image of blessing, right? It's that the growth, especially when you're living in a industrial watering, industrial fertilizing culture, the amount of grain that is produced, the excess, is really to you almost accidental, right? We put as much effort as we can in. There's things that we can do, but then it just comes down to whether or not it's a good year for tomatoes, right? Last year, my garden in my backyard produced a ton, and this year it's just the weather has just been completely different, and I'm it's slower. It's slower going, and the rabbits came and they ate. And like rabbits existed last year, but for whatever reason, last year was the year of overabundant blessing, right? There's this amount that you can't include for. And so
Well, too much, an abundance of vegetables one year creates an abundance of rabbits the next.
that's interesting. It's a good point. It's a very good point. Also, the rabbit is very cute. And my mom, my I grew up eating rabbit, so they look delicious to me. It's a Maltese delicacy, rabbit. But my wife wants to adopt this thing. So, yeah.
We have 2 pet bunnies that live in our backyard. So, but I will not. I'm not going to eat them.
You're missing out. They're delicious.
Oh, I've had rabbit before. Yeah, it's good. But I'm just.
Yeah.
We got these ones. Some friends are giving them away, and so they're pets for the kids. We're not gonna traumatize them with that, unless if there's a real necessity. But I don't think. Yeah, I think we'll be okay.
We only eat ugly animals. That's what he's saying. Look, animals are more delicious the more cute they are. That is common knowledge. Okay.
I don't know, man.
Truly, teddy bear meat is the most delicious meat of all.
Yeah, but what about lobsters? That's
a good point.
Yeah.
That's a good point. Michael does not eat rabbits, though, because though they chew the cud, they do not part the hoof. Specifically stated, bunnies are centered out.
Yeah.
Though they chew the cud, they do not part the hoof. Okay, I got one more poem to read. Sandy, do you have anything to comment on what Michael brought out from there also?
Nope.
Okay, then would you read for us just verse 14?
And at mealtime, Boaz said to her, "Come here and eat some bread and dip your morsel in the wine." So she sat beside the reapers, and he passed to her roasted grain, and she ate until she was satisfied, and she had some left over.
The other's presence. She sits across from him. She is darker than him. Her lips are baked like bread, her fingers cut from crops, their eyes they meet. Her eyes are dark and ready to drip. His hold her, having held nothing so soft before. Her eyes are soft, dark and soft and ready to drip, yet so sweet, might drip honey and not tears. She fears she will overstay her welcome. He fears he is nothing to look at. Yet across him sat staring soft eyes with calloused feet. These feet are being made ugly by the path Yah has given. Grain is given. Her cut fingers grab a morsel he offers. Softer are her glances than even her eyes. She dips it in the wine and does not mean to smile, but she does. She looks up. As sweet as the wine was to her, her eyes were to him. He bears a subtle grin. Then they both return to their food, neither thinking they deserve the good of the other's presence. There, that's the end. There's that one. That is me taking a biblical scene and trying to make it what in romantic comedies is called a meet cute. Have you heard that expression before? Meet cute.
Yes.
Michael knows what we're talking. Yeah. Oh, we bumped into each other. I asked to borrow his pen. That's a meet cute. So. Yeah. Yeah. So the ending bit that I kind of want to be in is again, the brilliance of the narrative is in it's slow burn. You could make this so much faster. You could make this like a paragraph. You could make this a genealogy, right? That's all you would need to do to communicate the major aspects of the story. But the story has a slow burn. Sorry. And the slow burn part of it includes this idea, like that she's continuing to harvest. She's just hanging out. And that the things don't happen right away. There's an amount, the last poem, the next poem I think that's in my poetry anthology, I call Dayenu. Sandy, you've done Passover. Did you guys do the Dayenu thing? Do you know the Dayenu song? Dayenu.
I know of it. I've only sat through, when Christian churches get a visit from somebody that walks them through elements of it. I've not actually participated.
So the idea is that every single step of God rescuing Israel, God has given so much grace to them that it always would have been enough. Mm-hmm. If he had sent the plagues, but did not bring about the Passover, it would have been enough. If he brought them out of Egypt, but they didn't plunder the Egyptians, it would have been enough. If they plundered the Egyptians but he didn't bring them across the Red Sea, it would have been enough. If he brought them across the Red Sea, but he did not bring judgment upon Pharaoh, it would have been enough. Right? Every single step along the way, you can tell the story and see how much more God did than what was required. The extravagance of grace, the extravagance of what God did for his people, so that in the future, people will talk about this forever. They will talk forever about what God has done. It's all, like I see that as elements within this text. God could have brought Naomi to be taken care of by Ruth, and it would have been enough. The book could end here, where Boaz gives a little bit extra, and that would have been enough as well. And there's something sweet about that, knowing how much God has done and realizing that he could do much, much more and will in our lives. And we haven't even deserved up to this point, let alone everything he will bring. Michael, you look very deep in thought.
I'm just looking at the Bible. It's got all these notes and stuff. I'm seeing if any of them are interesting, but I don't know. I'm not seeing anything particularly important to add.
Okay, thank you.
It's the John Walton, blah, 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 whatever. Cultural backgrounds. Got it for $3, so.
Oh, not bad.
Yeah.
I have one more thing to bring up, but before I do that, Sandy, is there anything else for you?
No, I've just enjoyed listening.
Good. And Sandy, do you eat adorable animals? Are there especially beautiful animals that you've eaten and enjoyed? Your veal, your duck.
I have eaten veal. I've eaten duck. Are ducks adorable? I guess they are.
I think so. I think a duck is much more adorable than a chicken and much more delicious.
Ducks eat bread.
They do.
They do.
I have no idea what the context of that one is. I've seen that clip an infinite number of times, and I don't know what it's about.
Yes, CW wears the same thing every time he's like on screen, so it's hard to know.
Okay, so the last thing I kind of want to end on is this idea of God being present in just so happens, where we can see this is really going to work out very, very well. It's coincidence, it's all these things, and it's our wisdom to be able to see them. You must grow in wisdom to be able to witness them. You don't just get to see them because they're happening in the world. That requires a kind of wisdom.
Are you counting all the normal day-to-day stuff that
Yeah.
falls under just so happens?
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I think it's like your alphabet soup thing, like either no amount of words will suffice, or you're gonna see messages everywhere you look. So, I mean, that's how I see it. That's what I always think of, like people when they say like, oh, apologetics doesn't work, or you shouldn't do this or anything like that. It's like, no. There's no amount of evidence that will convince somebody who doesn't want to see it, but there's no amount of evidence that can unconvince someone who has seen it. There's more than enough evidence to believe if you want to.
Well, part of my experience that I'm currently going through and why my alarm went off is, my dad is trying to seek God right now, hoping that God will reveal himself to him. And so yesterday I'm praying for my dad, and I was praying for him every hour on the hour. Like, even if it's a small prayer, to set myself in the direction that I set myself in when I pray, no matter what room I'm in, and to pray for my dad. And it's almost been a little bit frustrating because my dad, independently of me, when I first became a Christian, I talked to him a lot about stuff. And that's when my dad moved from agnostic to atheist, because it really was like he went from being open to being closed, and it was me becoming a believer where that occurred. So at first, these arguments, not only did he not connect with them, it made him push harder against God. And for some reason, over the last year, those same arguments are now working. Honestly, Michael, it makes you kind of believe in Reformed theology a little bit, where it's like, why? Why is now the moment? I don't know what has occurred that actually makes this so that it works, right? It's so arbitrary that all of a sudden it's opening up. And my prayers are for my dad right now, over and over again, that these little things will somehow be enough, whereas before they weren't enough, right? That we are given an abundance. It's more than enough, but do we accept it? Hello, Yoav.
Hi, Yoav.
That's kind of what I'm sitting in and trying to figure out for myself, and what I'm praying for. His name's Tony. If you guys want to pray for my dad, please do. As he's opened himself up even to the possibility of God's existence, it's family time has been so much more enjoyable. It's such a strange thing that how minimal we have to open ourselves up to have amounts of growth. It's very interesting to me.
Do you hear me?
Yes, hear you.
Hello, everybody. I have a comment about God and coincidence.
Please.
In my mind, there is a sort of equivalence between God and coincidence, because we cannot possibly see God, but we can only see the coincidence. So for us, it looks the same. And I give you the first example is the creation of Adam in the first chapters of Genesis. So God gathers some dust, and lo and behold, there is a person. Even people who disbelieve this story completely will not deny there was some dust around. So all that is required is that some coincidence that all the atoms in the dust just happened by chance to get themselves in the right order to make a living person. So the act of God is the coincidence. And if you believe, if you don't believe Genesis, if you believe the science, which actually I do, the science tells exactly the same story. There was stuff around some billions of years ago, whatever. There was stuff around. Nobody denies that the right stuff was around, and the temperature was right, and the electric current was right. Everything was ready. All that was missing was the impossible coincidence of the start of life. That's the comment.
Well, now I don't know to what extent you guys have had. My wife and I met each other in university. We were only at the same university for 1 year, and then we went in completely different directions. And we continuously bumped into each other year after year at things, and then didn't see each other for at least, like, I think it was a decade after we first met each other, and I think 7 years since we had ever seen each other. My biggest breakup and her biggest breakup happened at the exact same time, and then we re-meet each other at a friend's wedding. I was invited by the bride. She was invited by the groom. And that couple, they're divorced. It was so, like, it didn't work out for them, but I'm so glad that they got married, right? And it was just so happens that we were invited and we're sitting next to each other at this wedding. And that's where we reconnected. And like, I'm so thankful for that. And I've seen God operate in my life in this incredible way. And some of the greatest blessings in my life have come entirely by accident, not by my continuous effort, but by, Michael, what you were kind of talking about before, by these fringe things. By, as we were talking about before, you can say, oh, God didn't bless the field. It was just a good year for tomatoes. But it's just like, come on, guys.
It just so happens that my story of meeting my wife is very similar, where we were at college for 1 year together. We hung out one time that she doesn't remember, but she knew who I was because I played guitar on the stage a lot. And then a few years later, she met a girl at a concert who invited her to go to a church, which just so happened to be the church that I went to. But I was actually living in California at the time, and then just so happened to, planning to move there, just so happened to lose the church that I was working at, shut down the program, and I moved home, and then she was there at my church. And yeah, so it is, I mean, that's the thing. It is a thing of like, people can say all this stuff is coincidence or whatever, and like everything is, but I don't know.
It's purine. That's so important. The role that the casting of lots play, and again, that within the text, it isn't overtly like, like it doesn't say this is Hashem operating. You just have to, if you look with wisdom,
Yeah. Well, and there's those miracles every once in a while that are, very clear, like God's taken a hand in something, but usually, like whatever, Judah's sons, it says like, well, he was evil, so God killed him. So it's like, okay, well, but most of the time he just kind of lets things go. He only intervenes when he really needs to make the thing that he wants happen.
I also wonder about at the time versus later on, because there's instances as they're occurring, we don't experience them as God meeting us there. It's like later on we reflect and we just go, wait a second, what are the odds? Like you think that such like the planets aligning, all those moments of perfection that you would notice, but you don't at the time.
You mean like the times when there was only one set of footprints in the sand?
I was referring, in my mind, there is a story in the Gospels where the resurrected Jesus appears to people, but they don't realize it's him until after he's gone.
Yeah, on the road
Right.
to Emmaus. Yeah.
Yeah, where it's upon reflection, it's looking back that you go, wait a second. I mean, that's a Kierkegaard bit too, right? We experience life moving forward, but it can only be understood backwards. So we're constantly going through things that seem completely mindless and pointless. But we look back and we go, oh, now I can understand.
This isn't a Ruth comment or a story comment. Just, I've been wondering how you or Yoav, since the 45, hour live stream. So it's good to see you.
I don't think we've met, Yoav. I'm assuming you're in Israel.
You missed that time when I was the star of the show. How can you possibly? I mean, I will move around. That's my story. That's that's what I said. That was my first address to God, and there was a story behind it.
No, if they haven't seen.
Then I found there is actually a picture proving it. Do you need me to explain the picture?
Yeah, I'd love
They
to
should hear this.
Yeah, I'd love to hear it. It sounds like it might be related to even what we're talking about. So please.
I don't think so. But what you see here is a memorial. Let's see if I have a hand. Whoops. These inscriptions are the names of fallen soldiers. And this is a memorial to the fallen soldiers. And that's my neighborhood. All this, you see the car parks and the lifts. This is the neighborhood I grew up in. And you see me with the mask. That's the Corona mask. So you can date the picture. That's the month of May in the time of the Corona. And there's some flowers. And the flowers were brought by... it's amazing. It's always the women that come first to the grave. So there were about 3 women that came to bring the flowers, and my mother and I. And since I was the only male around, then I had to read the prayer. What is missing in the picture is the crowd of people that was supposed to be here. Because that's a special holiday in Israel where everybody was supposed to be around.
Okay.
I'm talking to people. And the story is the dog that didn't bark, the people that didn't come. So the secular people who used to have a religion in which every year they came to the memorial to respect the memory of the fallen soldiers, at that year they completely lost the religion. And since they lost the religion, there is a vacuum. And I put it carefully. There are other religions waiting to fill the vacuum. That's an introduction to me.
Thank you. Can I ask what holiday it was?
We have Independence Day.
Okay.
And the day before Independence Day is Memorial Day for the fallen soldiers.
Mhm.
And this is a neighborhood of ex-army people.
Okay.
So there are lots of names of people who grew up in the neighborhood or lived in the neighborhood in all of the wars since the 50s. This is why it was very important to us until the plague came, and then memory got wiped out.
Well, I think it's very, your use of the term memory, I think, is so important, because to me, memory is what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Memory is the ability to see these things, where it speaks in the Torah of the people forgetting, right? That to the people, that they will forget who God is. That the things like Passover are done so that you remember who we, like it's a gathering to remember who God is, who we are. So it's very interesting what you're saying, that as they're drifting away from their religion, they're also even forgetting their history, right? Because those things are the same thing. To forget the story is to forget who you are.
It's even worse than forgetting. It's the famous Israeli stone-headedness, because we perfectly remember well the events of the end of the Second Temple. And the events with Jesus were not our only mistake at the time. We are perfectly remember, and we have completely internalized the fact that we have not behaved ourselves well at the time, and we perfectly well deserve what came to us. We remember that, but we still go on with the same mistakes. That's people for you.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. Wow. Oh. It's also, it's such a privilege to be having this conversation with everyone here, because we are all living in societies that are living under this willful forgetfulness, and it's such a pleasure to be able to speak in any way to encourage each other to remember. And I think about the person of Boaz within these stories, because he's living in a world of people who have forgotten, right? He's living in a world where people are doing what's right in their own eyes, and he determines and wills for himself not to be that kind of person. He will remember, he will take care of, and even that image they speak of. Honestly, I think all these things are related, and I think it's perfect that you came today, because today within the passage they speak of the man who does not forget the living or the dead, right? That is how Boaz is blessed. It is good, my daughter, that you go out with this young man and rest in your field. Where is it? Yes. May he be blessed by Hashem, whose kindness has not forsaken the living or the dead. So there's this idea of the not forsaking, not forgetting, that it could have just moved on, and Ruth and Naomi be completely forgotten. Yeah. So this needs further exploring. Someone rando, this gentleman. Yeah. Honestly, even within us talking, I am right now experiencing God's grace. And so I really, really appreciate it. Thank you guys for coming out.
Yeah.
Please pray for my dad.
I will do that.
What does your dad do? He's retired.
He was an estimator. He did a bunch of things, but he does what I do, which is grade 5 math for a living, where taking blueprints and coming up with prices. He worked for a painting company and flooring company, whereas I work for a window company. So I'm measuring glass, and he was measuring walls. Yeah, mostly in Detroit.
Kind of explain why he was so mad at you.
Mad at me? What do you mean?
When you talked about when you became a Christian, how he went from being agnostic to atheist, pushing back hard. You're both estimators. You measure things. You balance. You.
Yeah. Well, and understanding some of the things too. Like I grew up very Catholic, and the first thing I started doing when I started taking my faith more seriously, when I was really seeking God, is I stopped taking communion. It's like because I was just like, what am I doing? What is occurring? You would think if I was reaching that point, then I would be taking it. I'd be, faster in line or more enthusiastic about it. But there's, Sandy, you talk about this, the pushing and the pulling away that God does. Even as Yoav was talking about it, that like he was set to pray because other people didn't show up, not because he was the excited one, the first one. It was sometimes you're forced, you're pushed, there's this moving back and forth that God lines up, revealing himself.
That picture, I look at the list of names, and it's such a short list. And I'm thinking about I watched I don't know if you guys watch anything on YouTube about the Israel-Gaza war. I watched the list of all the fallen soldiers that goes by, and the ages. They're like, anywhere from 19, 17 to 45 and older. And it's like,
And I've been thinking about some of it too, because at the center of every single like Canadian small town, there will be this beautiful old building that was the old city hall that's now too small. So now they're in some like ugly modern building. But there's this beautiful building, and in front of it there'll be, even if they don't have that, they will all have some kind of memorial to World War I. Right, that was considered to be the war beyond all wars, a place where people would gather to remember, and we just don't. Like even the notion of Remembrance Day, we just don't.
Jacob and I, my son, when he comes to visit, he wants me to walk because he wants me to be healthy, and it's funny. I'll give him 2 or 3 choices of where we can walk. But the last 3 or 4 times we walked around the cemetery. We go and we stop at Jack's grave and we check the flowers that got left there. When his sons did the unveiling, they have cloth that wraps. It took 2 years for the stone to go up and another year for them to get to when they did the unveiling. And I wasn't invited, but also I was sick as a dog that whole week anyway, so I wouldn't have been able to go. But I go and I keep an eye on the flowers that were left there. I took some petunias and somebody else left a thing of pansies. And the last time that we were there, the pansies looked like they were just about dead. I mean, it's been so hot here. And Jacob and I will go, and there's a watering can by a faucet every so often that people, or some people have brought and left, juice jugs or anything that has a handle that you can kind of hook around and leave it there and it won't blow away. and so watered the plants, and then we'll walk around the graveyard. There's all these roads and all the things, and the graves from those really old ones look like they've been there a couple of hundred years to the ones that are brand new fancy stones. And I'll say to him, which road do you want to go up and down? And then, so last time I went by myself just to check the plants because it's been so hot. But the last time Jacob and I were there, he picked a different road to go down, and we slowed down. There was a spot where, as you come around the corner, every gravestone was identical size, shape, and material. Every one of them in rows, several rows. And so I kind of waved him over and I said, "Come and look at these ones. Do you know why they're all the same? Do you know what is different with these ones, that they aren't all whatever the individual family did, where we see all these different ones? Do you know what makes these ones all the same?" And then we walked through and looked, and he can read some, so he knew. And I said, "Look, this one was a private, and this one was this, and this one was a cook, and this one worked in the maintenance. And on the other side of the road, they had the ones for the officers and a few things." And then I said to him, "These ones they've put separate because these ones, are the people that led the people over there." And one of the names I said, "And look," I said, there's a lady's name here. And she's over here because she fought too. She was a nurse, My children have always loved museums and history and things like that, and taken time over things. And when Yoav was sharing his story again today, I've heard it in the original sharing and now again today, and I just keep thinking about the increase in the names, every time that there's a war, every time there's something.
Well, and I think there's too much to remember. And part of the act of remembering is also figuring how to boil it down to something that each person can remember. Because you can't remember every battle of every people group, every clan that the Bassi clan back over got into.
Fought in wars. Well, my mother-in-law did. She scared off some German soldiers with a broom. She stood against them with a broom when they came.
That's an example of, okay, you remember that.
Bad, and take him to the work camp when he was obviously going to die if they took him away. He's like, he's not well.
Well, and that's, again, part of the act of memory is actually realizing what's important. So we retell this part of the story, and then we'll remember.
Well, that and when I met one of Jack's friends who's also had lost her husband, she told me she had a little memorial place set up in the bottom of her yard, and we talked about why remembering. You remember the names. A person is never really I don't know the proper Jewish background to this, but every time that the very fact that Jack is alive in my memory is something good. That we remember the people that we lose individually. We do that, and we keep them before God in that way.
And I would even say that there's something beautiful occurring in that. Like, I reaped the benefits of my family remembering something they didn't believe in. So, people talk about how there's tons of secular Jews and there's so many people that they celebrate Christmas, but they don't believe in anything. The truth is, though, is that there's some kind of blessing that occurs on a nation, even when they are at that level of memory. even when it seems completely insignificant, it still is something. Yeah. Okay. I'm going to end things, and I will end them with this video.
Whoa. Okay. Quick question, Michael. Does this view behind you relate to all the papers that you shuffle when you're in the car when you're online with us?
They're all different. Each piece of paper is for a different house I'm supposed to work at. So I only work in the ones that are more complete because I do the capitals. So yeah.
Nice. David
Michael,
has more
I'm
chickens.
muting you because you're out in the wind. Your glorious beard catching the wind.
Okay, it's quiet now. It's quiet now. I'm in the garage.
Okay.
So
This isn't as good of a chicken video. Where's the better chicken video? I think I just saw one. This one. So, okay.
So many chickens.
So you see the chicken? Oh, it's nothing. Sandy, how many chicks do you think are going to be under there?
8.
Fucking all.
Whoa!
wow.
Way more. Is that about 13 or 14?
Yeah, this is a ton. That one in the middle, I think that's the Moabite one that's run under the wings of Hashem. It's good. Okay, guys, thank you so much. Great talking to you again.
Yep.
West Coast refugees trying to do the Aaronic blessing, so I appreciate that. May the Lord bless and keep you. Please pray for my dad. Pray for ourselves that we, especially in this time, can act well and see God operating in the just so happens. Love you guys. Bye.
You too.
See you later.
Actually, Sandy, stick around.
What's up? Too funny. Hello, bonjour. You don't really need me in StreamYard, though, do you? Or do you need an invite? A robot? Oh no, this poor phone. That's good.
So I got an interest to an S-tuber.
Hang on. I'm going to go on the deck. This thing's... Oh, you got an invite to an estuary in Alston. Nice.
It is on Tuesday, Wednesday at 7:30 at the TRC Church in Alston.
Ooh. David is stepping immediately into things right after he gets back from Synod. Interesting. Yeah. Salverda. I've been there because friends used to go there or live there, or their family did. But no, I met David through, how did I meet? Paul Vanderclay or Junga Donk or I met him through Estuary.
Either way, they're having an estuary meeting there on Tuesday, and some guy got in contact with me through the YouTube stuff. I had a conversation one or two with him still on the phone. Not on the channel. And he invited me to Tuesday at 7:30. And I so happened to not be doing anything, so I'm like, okay, we'll show up this time.
Nice.
So if you are interested, I'll be there.
That is amazing.
Yeah.
Who
I
was?
just figured it was more in your direction.
You're more in my direction than other stuff, but yes. And if Phlebas would link and be interested in estuary, it's kind of like that would be fun too. But so who?
I don't even think that's common. Like, I don't even see him in the comments.
Josh.
At the end of when I did my little conversation with Paul,
Yeah.
I gave my email address and a couple of
You
people.
did. Oh, that's awesome.
He was one of them. He's like, I'm in Ontario. The guy named Josh. He's a Christian, and he's also a university. He's a younger guy.
Nice. So
So I was like, okay.
that's cool. I'll have to check whether or not David has let me know he's doing this. Because I was trying to get him to do it like last year. Yeah. So David Salverda. I have his contact info. Yeah. Yeah. Yep. Awesome. No, he made a I can go. I will go because I have been in online estuary. So we'll at least know the format if none of the other people there do.
I think for me, I'm necessarily connecting with people because I haven't talked to a ton of people outside of the online thing.
Yeah.
Just a bunch of people. Like, people bought on Jacob's channel now. Like, I think I've been in stuff that all of this recipe on some of his channel.
Yep.
I think some people might know like
Yeah. I think real life is a good thing. I didn't start an estuary up. Yeah, and see, I haven't started an estuary up here because actually getting people to talk to me, not just online, what has been a little. David did reply. I sent out, I've given my email out to a few people, but yeah, and we did talk a little bit about it, but at that point he was like, yeah, been there, done that, tried it, nobody showed up, don't think I'm really gonna, I don't know, maybe, so when I then I saw him in Hamilton at an Abide meeting. I shouldn't say that. Yeah, and conservative, they're the side that Jacob Federacci loves. I am in a church on the side that he detests. Yeah, I hang out with the woke people. They are, yes. And I'm trying to decide whether or not Acton CRC and the the one at the north end of Wealth, that both were the sponsors for the bridge, which is the little church plant I'm in. Yeah. Yeah, that's not good. They yeah, they're part of Hesed. Or she is, he's not. He went and sized up the Better Together thing, went, yeah. So I don't know. But I know, like, I mean, I spent so many years around the CRC people. They're good people. They really are. You take them from anywhere, they're good people. They're just, yeah. And so you know people that either go to at times or know people down in Mississauga. Yeah, Shringa, or are they up in Brampton now? Ruth Ann Shringa. Her husband is Drive House or Drive House? Yeah. Yeah. Oh, really good people. Yeah. So I would be willing to go up there, yes. And that's next week, Tuesday. I got to talk to Jacob about it because he usually comes to me on it. He might want to go, even if he doesn't participate. He could play his game, keep me company on the road. Yeah. Now, is the guy from, I wonder if the guy from up in Bradford is, I wonder if that's Josh. Is Josh in Bradford? Shoot, there was 3 or 4 names that I had. And does Phoebus know? It's a hike for him, but because he's in Kitchener. It would be amazing. You'd be really good at it. They have a format, so you go around and kind of introduce yourself, then you go around the circle a second time, and everybody brings up one of 4 points that you can find online in the Estuary online hub thing, where it's like, oh shoot, what is it? I'll send it to you. I can never remember the name of 4 things. Jump in blind. It'll be a lot. It'll be a ton of fun. Yes. One must ask the typical Discord question though is, did you bring pizza? When people join Discord, it like, or at least on Grail Country it is. I don't know if it is in Jacob's channel. Maybe the Grail Country guys set it up. It says, "Hi, so and so. Did you bring pizza?" So, yeah. So I will put it down, and they've got it to start, so it runs from 7 to 9. That's great. And I fell asleep last night because last night with the online estuary, I've been sleeping through a ton of stuff. Yeah. But that's awesome. Thank you for letting me know. And I will go online and investigate. Oops. Ugh. So, of course, that cut out because I moved away from my door to my balcony. This building does not like heat or other things. So yeah, so hopefully I shall see you at the estuary in Elliston. And I may have my son in tow. Yep. I can teach you some sign language. Bye. Okay. I always forget. Wash these. Birthday. Really? Really? Oh, leave. Mhm.